Hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well this week. I am actually out of town this week at the HIMSS conference, and I have the page up here because I want to talk to you a little about maybe an opportunity for folks to come next year. HIMSS is the Health Information and Management Systems Society. It is the largest national organization that focuses on health IT, health informatics, and related subjects. So I had the pleasure of speaking today at a session in our academic forum where I shared information about the way I teach health information technology in some of my courses, and so it was really great to be able to do that. But so this organization, HIMSS, has a very broad focus. I've always, in the past, years ago, I always regarded it as a very IT technology heavy area. And I'm not a tech person. I'm pretty tech savvy, but I'm not. I can't code. I can't do. I'm not a programmer. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I know enough about coding to be dangerous to use in data situations, but that's about it. Or to code a website, I can do that too. But yeah, that's about it. So I hadn't really given them much thought. I have so many other professional organizations I'm involved in. But then I began to look at this organization, and we've already talked. Someone's honking the horn outside. Sorry. We've already talked a bit about the importance of data. In this past week, actually, we looked at data and things like predictive analytics and precision medicine. So what precision medicine lives on is data, health information. And as we move forward in the industry with things like patient-centered care models, patient-centered care models don't run without data and data sharing between organizations. And that's really when I got involved because I was compliance officer and I had a lot of focus on privacy and security compliance. And especially now, these folks are doing a lot of good work with regard to cybersecurity. So really interesting organization. Why I'm telling you all this is I found out about this opportunity today. I wasn't aware of it previously, but they make an opportunity available for students at the HIMSS conference every year to be program assistants. So what this means is that you come to conference, you're able to take part in many of the events. You're eligible to take part in all of them, but you do have to do some volunteer work for them. Maybe working at the registration booth where people pick up their badge, maybe handing out tote bags, maybe monitoring a room in case there's a problem with a AV thing or something like that. So, but you do get to come. About 45,000 people come to this conference. So think of that as 45,000 people that you could meet, talk to, learn from, and maybe, especially if this is an area that you're particularly interested in, seek jobs from in the future. So, huge conference, and I've spoken at conferences for 15 plus years. And I thought when I had a room with 1,500 people in it, that was huge. The keynote session tomorrow morning, which is our first actual keynote session, which will include all people. There's going to be 45,000 people in there. So it's very, very large organization, very, very large conference. So what this program assistantship does is it gets you access to the program. It gets you access to the exhibit hall where, as this says here, about over 1,300 different healthcare IT companies. And it's not just the IT technology side, but also like UPMC has a huge display here. And so it's not just for those, technology programmer type jobs. There's a broad range of needs that this organization fits. It does also include meals throughout the conference for students. It includes housing. You have to share with other students, but and I'm sure it's a hotel because that's where we're all staying. We're in Orlando, so there's hotels everywhere, but it's a shared room. And then also conference registration, which is very expensive, typically about $1,500, I think. And then transportation to and from the convention center are included. I don't know a lot of detail about this cash incentive, but there is an option for that based on your performance during the conference. So the only thing that's really not covered here would be kind of external things, like if you wanted to go to something in the evening, if you were free, etc., and transportation here. So if this was something that you were interested in, we could certainly seek to maybe get a grant from one of our department areas, seek a grant for folks that are accepted to the program and need funding for transportation. That's certainly something I'd be happy to address with the dean. I'm sure she would love to see some of our students down there. So, and if you're in the Pittsburgh area, it's pretty cheap to fly to Orlando right now. This is in Orlando this year, and it's in Orlando again next year. The year after that, it'll probably move out west somewhere. I know they do it in Vegas. They've done it in Anaheim. It's always a nice place to go to. So it's can't complain about that. So if this is something you're interested in, you do have to be 21 or older. So any of our students that are not 21 yet, I know that we have some traditional undergraduate students in our online courses right now. So you do have to be 21, unfortunately, at the time that you would be going to conference. You also need to be a student member of HIMSS, it's a reasonably priced student membership that gets you access to quite a bit of quite a few resources, even outside of the conference. So it's very interesting opportunity. If anyone wants more information about HIMSS, obviously hop right out to the HIMSS website. If you go to himssconference.org, it's HIMSS. There was one of our speakers today was making fun because there's a new company called HIMSS without the second S that sells some interesting products that this HIMSS is getting a lot of calls about. So it's an entirely different HIMSS, but HIMSSconference.org. You can click on the schedule, get a feel for what types of sessions are offered here, and just see if that's something you might be interested in. But keep that in the back of your mind for next year or for the future as well. It's open to graduate and undergraduate students. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our information from last week, and it's perfect timing because we looked at information technology. So how do we use data in our organizations? How do we manage data? How does information technology help us as an organization moving forward? And now one of the bigger areas is this knowledge management, or kind of the term, we use the term knowledge management in our program, but really the more widely accepted term is information governance. So what about information governance? How we have all of this data, but how are we going to manage it? How are we going to govern it so that it's useful to our organizations and we don't just have a data glut that's not helpful to anyone overall? So we looked at those types of things. We also, in our discussion board, looked at artificial intelligence, precision medicine, big data. And the reason I asked the question, are you excited or do you have concerns? The biggest concern with most people that don't have, that aren't in the industry, don't have a hand in the industry, is privacy and security. They read online or hear on the news of these huge cybersecurity breaches. And information is going out, and it may just be a name and a date of birth or a name and a social security number, but just that in itself can be very damaging. What if all of your genetic data was kept in a warehouse, which is, when you look at the All of Us study, that's really what they're looking to do, is really map the entire genome of 1 million people. And so all of that information's out there. That could be very damaging if it was released to employers, insurers. One would hope that they would be honest and not discriminate against people, because maybe an insurance company says, oh, well, that person has all of these predictors in their genetic code for very expensive services, so we're not going to insure them. Or maybe an employer, oh, well, this person is predicted to have these types of things happening to them based on their genetic code. Or it shows certain things that maybe that employer are not areas that employer is interested in having employees dealing with those issues. And employers could start, and they actually can, it's illegal, but if the information was breached, maybe employers could somehow use that information against an employee. And again, that's illegal to do, but there's a reason we have police, and there's a reason that the FBI investigates fraud and abuse all the time. There are rules, but there are people that break them purposefully. So just some interesting thoughts there, and certainly a topic area that is of importance. I'll talk a little more about infotechnology in a few minutes. I have some slides. I normally print out my quiz, but I can't because I'm in a hotel room. So I'm a little lost right now with that. So I did make some slides that had the quiz questions. But this week, so for week 5, we're actually going to be looking at human resources. So this is an area that, for whatever reason, many of our students end up really interested and excited about human resources as an entry point into the healthcare system. Be aware that most folks that go into high levels of management in healthcare human resources actually have degrees in human resources and not in health administration. So if this is a path that you would be interested in taking, you're in a great place for your undergraduate, but you may want to think about a graduate program, a master's degree program, specifically in human resources. So you'll get the base of healthcare administration and how do the systems function, and then that layer on top of specific to human resources, and that's a really great combination to help people move forward. It doesn't mean that you can't go on and have be a director of human resources with a degree in something else. Actually, my daughter is a director of human resources. She has a public relations degree, so she didn't even know anything about human resources when she went to work for the company. So you can certainly work your way up as well. But if that is an interest area to you, just something to keep in mind. So we have a few different things. Employee retention is one of the issues that we'll talk about in our discussion board. Issues related to retention, burnout of healthcare workers, and even just shortages of healthcare workers, major problem. So important topic. We also have another group case study assignment, different groups this week. So make sure that you get together with your group, as noted in here in the classroom and also in the announcement. They both list out the 5 groups. And again, we're going to, and if you could, this would be helpful to me. Use that self and peer assessment and submit it right with your work. So every student in the classroom needs to submit the full assignment that you're doing. And when you submit that full assignment, that Word document, when you submit that to us, or to me, also submit in the classroom that self and peer assessment, so we don't have to chase them down like we did in the last grouping. Let's see. Couple of quiz questions to go over. People did really well in the quiz this week, so there isn't really a lot to go over, but if you have additional questions other than the few that I'm going to take a look at here, please just let me know. So the first question was, software applications in healthcare have traditionally been used to manage. And there was originally a problem with this question. There were 2 answers that were pretty redundant, so I did make an adjustment. A few students had already taken the quiz, and if they answered one or the other answer to the question, you did get points for that. So if you were one of those first couple students that had taken the quiz, you probably saw a change in your points if you had gotten that wrong and you had answered the other question or answered the other proper answer. But so I did adjust the answers. So the answer is healthcare expenses, and here's the reason why. In the textbook, it talks to us about how traditionally, in the past, historically, we've used software to manage the administrative aspects of our operation. So things like, financial services, like accounting type things, billing and finance, patient billing and coding. Those are the areas where we've used software for 45 years, 40 years, whenever we started getting big data or big servers in hospitals. So probably 40 years at this point is when we really started using software with regard to those things. The question or the answer that was most often answered that wasn't healthcare expenses was clinical operations. And this is a more recent trend that we are using software for clinical operations. And when we say that, we're talking about things like the health electronic health record, things like a PACS system, which is an archiving system for radiology images. So these types of things, although they've been around for a little while, they are not what we traditionally used software applications for uh, in the healthcare environment. So I apologize for the original confusion. If you're still confused on this question, let me know. This one was the most frequently missed question. So if you're still confused on it, please let me know. But the use of software for clinical operations is a much newer thing than with expenses and the other side of the house, the administrative side of the house. And so the other two questions kind of relate back to that question as well. So this one is, the delivery of healthcare lends itself to automation because there's a bunch of answers here. I won't read them all. But the main reason that it is that automation works well is because it has many repetitive workflows. You're doing a lot of the same thing over and over and over and over. And so by automating it, it's hopeful to save some time to make things more efficient. I think of a system that's has only probably been used for the last 10 years aggressively, and that's computerized physician order entry. So in the past, when a physician would order something, either if it was the inpatient setting, the nurse would write out the order, the physician would say, I want this, and the nurse would put the order through so that the patient would get their service. Maybe it was a lab test or whatever. In the outpatient setting, you may remember going to the doctor's office and having them hand you like a script, just like you were getting a prescription, to go to the hospital and have some lab work done or have an X-ray done. And it was, each patient was getting this, and it's very repetitive. Everyone that goes to the hospital has to have this thing. So what can we do to cut that? Well, now we have a computerized physician order entry system where the physicians themselves can go in, say, I want this, a couple check boxes, and off goes the order off to the hospital. So you don't have to carry anything. There's no chance of you losing it. And then it is communicated directly to the hospital or the lab or whomever it is they're sending it to, so that it's very clear what the physician wants. Now, it isn't. It's an internal system type issue, internal organizational type system. So if you go to a UPMC urgent care because it's the closest one and you really need assistance, but you normally receive services at St. Clair Hospital, that UPMC physician order entry that they order for you for some follow-up testing or something at the hospital, it's not going to go direct because it's a UPMC system or it's a St. Clair system. In those cases, you're likely to still get the handwritten note to get the services, or they may send it over electronically, but it's not the same type of system. But because of these repetitive workflows, that's why it makes so much sense to automate it. A couple of check boxes, boom, it's off to the hospital, as opposed to handwriting out these orders. Another, and this really relates back to the first one that we looked at, another question that some folks got wrong. Computer systems were not used initially by clinicians because early systems, and then lots of different answers. B and C are combined. You'll see here B and C are combined to make D. So these are the two things that were very much focused on why computer systems were not used by clinicians, because they were very cumbersome, and to use this cumbersome system would take time out of their day. So they took more time. They weren't more efficient, like the CPOE system I was just talking about. That creates efficiency. You still get providers that grumble about it, but it creates efficiency in the system. But but they were cumbersome. They weren't efficient at all, the older systems. So this is why they really weren't used much in the clinical realm. It's a newer advent from, obviously we've had information technology availability for a very long time, but it's been within the last 10 to 15 years tops that we've really seen it breaking into the clinical realm. So much so that now we're using clinical pathways, which is really a decision system that physicians can use by, it's filled with the data, and it can provide you, okay, here's the data about that patient, here's their lab results, here's this, here's that. And the system itself will tell you what it thinks your next step should be as a provider. So really interesting systems, and it's all based on the evidence that's out there, research that says, okay, if this patient has this, you should do this. A lot of physicians don't like it and won't use them, but they're available, and those systems will continue to improve. So our answer to this, computer systems were not used initially by clinicians because early systems took more time to use and were cumbersome to use. And that's our answer there. So that's all I have. Like I said, I am away this week out of the office, but I am certainly available to you. I will be, you can email, you can call my office, and I do receive those on my email as well. One thing I will point out, I'm still working on grading the paper from week 3, and I apologize. It's taking me a bit of time to get through them. One thing that I'm noticing in not everyone, but in many people's writing, and I'll caution you about this, I'm seeing a lot of people that are, the one thing that I'm really seeing a lot of is people making very sweeping statements about things. Like, for example, if you were to say in your paper, computer systems were not used because early systems took more time and were cumbersome. If you said something like that in your paper, you would have to cite that because that's not your original thought. That's information that came from our textbook, from our resource that we were reading. So even though you're not copying and pasting directly, it's not a direct quote, you still need to cite it because it's not your original thought. I'm seeing people taking information and really making broad sweeping statements about things like, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head. I don't want to pull out sentences from anybody's work. But let's just say, since I'm here in Orlando, let's say Orlando is the greatest vacation destination ever. Well, you can't really say something like that in a paper because unless you have literature to back that up, that's a very broad sweeping statement that is your personal opinion, but may not be true. So my opinion is Orlando is the greatest place to vacation ever because I love it here. I got married here. It's my favorite place to go when I have a vacation period, which isn't all that often. But so it's nice to be able to come here for a conference. But I would never put that in a formal written work because I don't have anything to back that up. I might be able to pull some statistics that say of American families, 45% of them visit Orlando or Anaheim Disneyland at least once every 5 years or something. So that kind of a statement I can say because that is, and I would have to cite it because I would have statistics to back it up and I can share that. I want you to be careful, especially in these reflection papers, of making these broad reach statements on things that, when I'm looking for your opinion on something, I want your opinion, but don't write sentences just to write sentences about broad-reaching things like Orlando's the best place ever, because there isn't any documentation to back that up. The other thing I will suggest is for our on-ground students, there's the Writing Center that's on campus, and for our online students, there is what's called Smart Thinking, which you can see in the left-hand side of the classroom. I would encourage you to use Smart Thinking or go to the Writing Center. I'm seeing a lot of structural issues in writing, and that's why it's really taking me a lot of time to get through the papers each week. I'm seeing a lot of structural issues, a lack of citations. I will typically give you one pass on not citing anything. The next time around, it becomes plagiarism. So be sure you're citing things. An example, is this, like this computer system's not used initially, etc. That needs to be cited appropriately. The example that I gave about the percentage of people that come to Orlando, you need to cite your sources. I encourage you to paraphrase information from things that you're reading, research that you're doing, but it's got to be cited. Don't go and just cut and paste and do a ton of direct quotes, because even if you have a lot of direct quotes, but it's too high of a percentage, that's not good writing either. So take information, digest it, then walk away, and then come back and type out what it is that you want to say about that particular topic, and make sure that you're citing things that you learned from your sources. So sorry to go on about that. It's just I'm seeing a trend that's a little disturbing. So I encourage you, if you have questions, please reach out to me. If you have questions about APA, but generally, structure, function, or structure and grammar, spelling. Be sure that you're writing in very formal language. You're not writing as you would speak, because you don't want to do that. Use the resources available to you to become a better writer. I encourage very, very good writers to go to the Writing Center, and I encourage beginning writers to go to the Writing Center, because they can help you on different levels. So I encourage you to go to the Writing Center and avoid those really broad sweeping statements without anything to back them up. A lot of people will put that in there as filler or fluff, and we can see when you're doing that. So I don't encourage you, if you really don't have anything else to write about. I'd rather see a shorter paper that's full of really good content than a longer paper that's full of fluff. You'll probably lose points if it's too short, but at least it would be a solid starting grade, that you'll lose a few points for it being too short, as opposed to a paper that's 3 pages of just fluff, and poor structure, etc. You're going to have problems with that. So that's it. Any questions, please let me know. Like I said, I'm available. My daytime availability is a little limited, but I will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, thanks so much.